Hello, one and all. It's my view of My Hero Academia Vigilantes, Chapter 125, Toward the Future. And with this chapter, the era of the Crawler has truly come to an end. His apartment, the base of operations, has been demolished. His vigilante career is over. The Crawler is truly dead. And this really couldn't be all that surprising because this has been hinted at for a very long time. I think way back even in Chapter 1, it was said that Koichi's apartment was super illegal and that at any point it could be demolished and he could be forced to move. Plus, Koichi himself said, oh, this will be my last summer as the Crawler. And then after they said, oh, once this hoodie's worn out, then I'll give it up, then I'll retire, then I'll no longer be a vigilante anymore. So yeah, the fact that the Crawler died here metaphorically makes a lot of sense. It's been heavily foreshadowed. Though what I wasn't expecting quite so much was that wouldn't just be a death, but also a rebirth. Not only would the Crawler die, but that he would be reborn as the Skycrawler. And his dingy little apartment would be reborn as, I don't know, something massive. It was bought up by the Captain Celebrity Corporation, so it's going to be made into something new and shiny and amazing. And seriously, let's just take a minute to appreciate how far Koichi has freaking come. I mean, the first few chapters, his big break, his big upgrade to his powers was learning, oh, wait a second, I can brake. I can go in reverse. I can, go left, right. I can turn really well. Oh my god, that's amazing. This makes me so much more effective as a vigilante. And now here he is, being called upon by the mayor of New York City as the second hero in this giant agency about to leap off a freaking skyscraper and go stop a villain somewhere. Holy mother of God, he's grown up. He has grown up so much, and I'm so freaking loving it. Though this evolution wasn't without its own cost, because for Koichi, a big part of his hero work, of his vigilante work, was the fact that he knew Narahata, he knew the neighborhood, he knew the people, and had a very intimate relationship with all of them. He was essentially a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and now that he's, in New York City, covering a wide area, I don't think he'll have that same connection to the people. They won't see him as, hey, it's Koichi from down the street, how you doing? They'll see him as, oh, it's the number 2 hero of the Captain Celebrity Hero Corporation. He's a big deal. He's not on our level, and that's going to be a little bit sad. And I think that's reflected in Narahata as well, because like I said before, the neighborhood was destroyed and rebuilt as this giant sparkling skyscrapers, but that's not really what the neighborhood was before. And the fact that, these new pristine buildings mean that they've kind of lost some of the heart. They've kind of lost some of the personality that the buildings used to have. So that's sad. I mean, not necessarily a bad thing. Koichi's a freaking hero working for Captain Goddang Celebrity, being called out by the mayor of New York City. That is amazing, but like I said, not without its costs. Though the question is certainly raised, will Koichi stay in America? Will he stay in New York City? Or will he return to Japan? Because Makoto and Captain Celebrity Corporation, they, bought up a lot of those buildings that were destroyed during the fight, which I'm guessing is part of like a plea deal. Like, okay, we'll buy up all these buildings and you don't charge Koichi for committing a whole bunch of crimes. But also, they're going to build something there, some huge new facility, which is probably going to be a new branch of the Captain Celebrity Hero Agency in Japan, which Koichi could end up leading. He could be in charge of, that part of Japan, Narahata, making sure that everyone's safe and protected there. I mean, it's a smaller neighborhood than most, but if it's being, gentrified, if it's being turned into some new big deal place, then it could certainly use its own dedicated hero agency, and I would really like to see that. And it would also just make so much sense for Koichi to return to Narahata, to return to Japan right now, because in a lot of ways, his path has mirrored All Might's path. I mean, let's not forget, they were both people who were looked down upon for being weak and useless until they found a teacher who was able to bring out the most in them. And then after losing that teacher as a result of All for One, they, basically had to flee Japan to America, where they trained and evolved and grew to their best self before returning to Japan to stop All for One once and for all. That is the path of both Koichi and All Might, and I so love the parallels there. And I don't think it was a coincidence. I think it was definitely planned out ahead of time, and I so love that. Of course, even if the Captain Celebrity Hero Agency branch office isn't up and running by the time, the war breaks out in the main series, I could still see Koichi finding a way, somehow, some way, to make it back to Japan and lend helping hand to protect his neighborhood. Oh, I'd love to see that. I would so love to see that. And we have, one chapter left. I'm really hoping we actually, maybe get some foreshadowing on what's going on with Koichi during the events of the main series. I would really love to see that. Also, Knuckle Duster. Where the freak is Knuckle Duster? He's been absent for a while. I mean, he showed back up, a few chapters ago to try and blow up Six, and that plan didn't go all that well, and he almost died, but Soga managed to revive him, and yet he didn't show up to visit Koichi and Pop, at least as far as we saw, so curious about that. Very curious about that. Anyway, though, back to this chapter, Soga's visiting Pop and being like, listen, you are not to blame for any of this, it's not your fault. Koichi, on the other hand, though, he demolished several blocks and just kind of laughed it off and then fled Japan. He should feel way more guilty than you do right now. Which, yeah, that's about right. And then one of the twins shows up and, she's annoyed that shady guy keeps dropping by and asks, how do you know him exactly? Which, oh, that's a long story. That is a very long story because let's not forget, in the very first chapter of the series, he kind of tried to assault Pop. Yeah, you remember that? That was weird. That was really weird. I don't think the author really had a full redemption arc planned for him all the way back then and just realized, you know what, I kind of like this guy. I'm going to keep him around for a bit longer. And then he became, basically an apprentice to Knuckle Duster, becoming essentially a detective in his own rights, which, God above, I want more backstory of this dude. I want more, future story, I mean. What happens to him after all of this? Because, he's gotten a lot of training. He's become a very smart person. He's become someone who could, basically become a cop if they completely ignore his background. Oh, I would love to see that. I would love to get a flash forward, him, being a detective in the future of this series. That'd be so amazing. Anyway, though, about the dancers, the triplets are training new dancers, and you found herself a boyfriend. A plain guy, and a very boring guy at that, given that he asks her to accompany him while he surveys alpine plant life, which, God above, that's boring. That is seriously boring, but, she looks happy, so good for her. Meanwhile, the other twin isn't having all that much luck with finding guys because everyone that shows up at the cat cafe is kind of a weirdo, kind of a really big weirdo, which does make a lot of sense. I think a big part of actually, building that cafe was the plan for it to essentially become a place for, what is the proper term, heteromorphs, mutants, something like that, people who are morphed by their quirks into becoming something that did not resemble a human. It was supposed to be a super accessible place for people of all body types, which is why, there's mostly dragons hanging out in here. That actually makes quite a bit of sense. And the cafe is so successful, they're planning on starting up a second location, with the twins' plan being to make it pirate theme, which, feels somewhat appropriate given that Pop has an eye patch now, but yeah, I don't think that's actually going to work out all that well for her. Actually, what I think could really work well here is a hero-themed cafe. I'm sure other people do it, but I think it would be really popular, have the waiters and waitresses all dressed up as famous heroes, maybe even have, famous heroes popping in every now and again for meet and greets and signings and whatnot. I mean, that sounds insane, but let's not forget, Pop knows a whole bunch of heroes. She's fairly good friends with Midnight. She knows, at least through Koichi, Ingenium, Edgeshop, Best Jeanist. I mean, Aizawa certainly wouldn't do it, but I think he could be tricked into showing up for it, and while Aizawa doesn't actually do that many, promotions or interviews or anything like that, I feel like he has to be popular. I feel like there is a fan base online who are just diehard fanatics for Aizawa, for Eraserhead. They love, his no-nonsense attitude. They love the fact that he, basically doesn't do interviews, that he just keeps himself, they focus on just doing the hero work, and they admire his technique. And they're probably people who've been saved by him who just appreciate his work as well. Oh my god, I would love a fan convention for Eraserhead fans. Oh god, and actually, they would probably even call themselves Eraserheads. Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be so amazing. Anyway, though, then All For One is really annoyed because, based on everything he can find, Koichi is ordinary. He is normal. His parents weren't superheroes, secret agents, spies. He had a very normal upbringing, a very normal childhood, and yet he managed to turn himself into one of the strongest heroes in all of the world simply through circumstance, experience, and sheer force of will that turned an ordinary man into a Superman. They actually said Superman. Good for them. And so All For One is really frustrated because his plan was, okay, you know what? I'm gonna take on All Might. He has the greatest quirk in the world, a quirk that can turn an ordinary person into a monster, but one that was, fanned over generations, slowly built up over time. And yet Koichi, while not the same level of All Might, certainly got, fairly close. And if 5-10 Koichis teamed up together, they could probably take down All Might. They might be able to take down All Might. Okay, probably not, but they get pretty close. They would get pretty freaking close. And so All For One's plan to take down All Might and take over the world won't work all that well if there can be a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth All Might, if ordinary people can just rise up through the weeds and become extraordinary. And so his plan needs to change. Operation Anonymous was basically based on the idea that, okay, we'll create an army of faceless, mindless, brainless soldiers who will follow orders exactly as we have them laid out, but that didn't really work all that well for him, and so they moved on to the bioengineered Nomu, people who actually managed to keep some fragment, some semblance of their original personality. It was said in the main series that All For One specifically chose villains who had a strong hatred for heroes for the sake of, basically tapping into that hatred, tapping into that mental willpower in order to turn them into, true monsters, people able to tap into the quirk singularity and go plus ultra. All because of Koichi and all because of Six. Because All For One was able to see how strong a person can become when they're, really going all out, when they're really putting their life on line. He realized that Nomu require willpower to truly tap into their full potential. And speaking of willpower, before Koichi heads out to go stop the villain, he takes a minute to look in the mirror and look at the scar that Six gave him, and think about the one villain he couldn't save. And that's, going to be his motivation moving forward to make sure he keeps everyone safe, even the villains. Though I have a lot of questions about how that's going to work, because Koichi isn't really able to fight villains. I mean, he isn't able to actually, attack them with his quirk if he thinks he's going to hurt them, which is problematic because he's not a vigilante anymore. He can't just hold back the villains long enough for the heroes to arrive and save the day. He needs to put the villains down himself. Not kill them, probably, but, at least injure them, knock them unconscious, do something to them. And unless, he has some sort of nets built into his gauntlet, which... his gauntlet does look a bit bigger, so maybe it does actually have a net installed in there. I'm not really sure how Koichi is planning on, incapacitating villains if he can't physically attack them. Curious, very, very curious about that. But please, let me know else down below. What do you think of the name, the Skycrawler? I love it, I freaking love it, and I guarantee you that was Makoto's idea. Speaking of which, what do you think she's planning on doing in Narahata with all the buildings that she basically bought up for herself? Are they planning on building a branch of the hero agency in Japan? I think it would make a lot of sense, especially if they started recruiting basically just people from the neighborhood to be, I don't really want to say volunteer heroes, but essentially unofficial sidekicks, people from the neighborhood who want to be able to, go around, patrol, keep an eye on things, make sure that their own people stay safe. I'd really like to see that. Where the freak is Knuckle Duster? What is he up to right now? And what's going to happen with Pop? I mean, she said that, she probably won't be able to dance again because of, all the serious damage that was done to her as a result of, being taken over, brainwashed, and almost murdered. But do you think she'll dance again? Do you think she'll go to America to be with Koichi? Or do you think, next chapter she'll be in danger and Koichi will rush to go save her from, probably just a 2-bit thug with a knife, but still... That'd be so amazing. Rushed in to save her one last time, and she said, "Oh, my hero." Oh, that'd be adorable. That'd be so freaking adorable. And where is this all going to intersect with, the main series? What's going to happen when the war actually breaks out? What role will Koichi have? And how will we see that reflected in the main series? I'm so excited for next chapter, the final chapter of Vigilantes, but hopefully not the end of the Crawler story, or the Skycrawler story, I mean. But let me know down below, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video, and until then, peace!